So we're back for our second installment regarding the Laci Peterson case. Crime Talk Tea Time. Cheers.
Cheers, Crime Talk Tea Time.
So where we left off, we were talking about the timeline of events prior to Laci going missing, right? And so basically on December 23rd, I'm out of breath just from talking. On December 23rd, Laci's half-sister had cut Scott's hair at some point. She came over to their house, had pizza with them, and ended up leaving that evening. So she was basically the last person, other than Scott, to see Laci alive. So that's the reason that that's kind of an important thing to touch on. So the following day, all we have basically is Scott's account of what Laci was doing, you know, if that's even correct at all, right? So allegedly, he had breakfast with her, left to go fishing, which depending on who he was talking to, he kind of said different things. And, you know, at some point ends up driving back. He's leaving her some voicemails, which are just kind of cringy. Yeah, I would agree. Jinx.
Kind of gross.
Just kind of cringy, just kind of like establishing an alibi, if you will. It's kind of the impression that I got from the calls. Very like doting husband, but they just seem very disingenuous, I would say. So anyway, he's heading back. He gets to the house. He doesn't seem super concerned that Laci isn't there, but at some point does express some concern to her mother over the phone. And around 5:47, around 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve, Laci's stepdad does report her missing, Ron. And so they commence to searching the park, and Scott's kind of behaving oddly. We talked about that a little bit, to say the least. And at this point, you know, the police do interview Scott. They don't interrogate him necessarily, although they do have the good sense to record the interview. And just based on his behavior and kind of, you know, the mismatch of some of his statements and his timeline of things, they are at this point kind of starting to look at him as a suspect, right?
Right. And one of the criticisms that this case gets is that they didn't look at any other suspects, which is not true unless it's someone that knows the victim. They're going to look at the typical like violent offenders, sex offenders who got paroled. I know that I don't know to what extent they investigated this.
Right.
But one of the major criticisms is that they did not fully investigate the robbery that, according to the police report, happened on December 26th. But a lot of eyewitnesses, when I say a lot, I mean one eyewitness said that she saw them robbing this house. She didn't know they were robbing the house at the time, but basically across the street from Laci Peterson's house, this house was burglarized and they stole some of their valuables and a safe. And a woman driving by said that she saw all these guys with the safe on the lawn, and she didn't live, you know, close by, but she lived somewhere in the neighborhood.
Right.
And she said she had a bad feeling about those guys. And
this was odd.
Right. So according to her, that was on the 24th.
The police kind of insinuated that maybe she had her timeline wrong, though, right?
Right. And I'm not saying that she has her timeline wrong, but what I am saying is sometimes people think they know what they're talking about and sometimes they don't. I'm not saying that's the case with her, but what I will say is all of the eyewitnesses that said they saw Laci Peterson walking her dog, it's like a 3-mile stretch, and there's like 50 witnesses that said they saw her.
Yeah, it is
so
kind of
unless she was like running a marathon that day, she wasn't seen by most of those people.
Right.
So they have to weed out which people are telling the truth, which people are, you know, sadly mistaken but think they're telling the truth, you know. So it's complicated.
Eyewitness testimony is notoriously
flawed.
Not the most reliable source of information. So, you know, naturally you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt a little bit. And then also when the suspects of the robbery were apprehended, one of the first things that they said was that they didn't have anything to do with that pregnant lady going missing. So that's kind of a peculiar thing to say. Obviously that doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't involved, but it's just kind of noteworthy.
Are they saying, you know, we had nothing to do with that pregnant lady who went missing because they had nothing to do with
right, you know.
Or are they saying
I didn't do it.
Right, or are they saying it because
but you did rob a house.
Well, that's another thing is, you know, when I first heard that, I thought, why would a robber kidnap a pregnant woman because she saw
Sounds
them.
like a
Just
liability.
drive away.
Yeah, just
Drive
drive away. Or even to like kill her in broad day, but why would you abduct her and keep her with you?
Some of those guys were on the FBI's most wanted list.
Gotcha.
Like, I think one of them was. So it's like, killing isn't beneath
Too
them.
far out of the question. Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely some kind of concerns around the robbery that took place and how it, you know, maybe could or could not have been related to the case, right? And then at some point, is it December 28th or the 30th, Amber Fry ends up coming forward.
Yes, so Amber Fry is his mistress who did not know that Scott Peterson was married. She was introduced to him by her friend who met him at a conference. The way the story goes is basically he went to a work conference and met this lady there. I can't remember her name, but Sean. Okay, and he was filling out a name tag and he said, "Oh, what can I write on my name tag to help me pick up women?" And she goes, "Oh, I'll help you." And she writes, "I'm rich" on it.
There you go.
And he said, "How about horny bastard?" or something. Can I say
Such
that?
a way with words. I don't know.
Right. And so then he
somehow she finds this charming, right? And although I don't know if she just said that she had a boyfriend or was taken, but she
had someone.
Yeah, she was dating somebody, and so she kind of politely turned him down, but said, "Oh, I have this friend," and so she thinks to herself, her single, you know, girlfriend is, of course, Amber Fry, who's 27. She's a massage therapist. She's a mom, and basically they're kind of almost set up in like a blind date kind of situation,
right?
Because Sean, you know, obviously recommends that he like take her out, so he arranges for them to have dinner and picks her up and says, "Oh, I need to like freshen up at the hotel."
Right, because he just came in from traveling.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Okay, I mean, I'm not gonna like sleep with you, you know."
Right.
And then they go to the hotel and he's got it all decked out with roses and champagne and he's like, "Let's toast to our future."
He like just met her, but like,
yeah,
right.
and she's looking for someone special, so I think she saw that as like very flattering and very sweet. And if it's sincere, I mean, you know, maybe that's not weird, but he's totally love bombing her, which is something like narcissistic people do, or even like psychopaths do.
What is it with Scots being sociopaths? Is it just a
come on,
coincidence?
Scots out there?
Scots, you're not making yourself look very good.
Mm-mm.
And so Scott in particular is, of course, saying he's not married, never been married, doesn't want kids. Get this, doesn't want kids, even though he has one on the way. And of course, he's, you know, charming in his own sociopathic
come back
kind
to my
of
way.
way.
I just met you, kind of way.
You know, Amber obviously feels comfortable with him. She thinks they have some kind of future together. And keep in mind, when he's with, you know, his wife back at home, "Oh no, your name is Scott." Hi, Scott.
That's a lie.
Mike in Texas, 392.
Your name is Mike in Texas.
Telling lies already. It's not looking good for you, Scott.
Wow.
Hate to break it to you. But when he's with Laci, naturally he has to come up with some kind of excuse, right? So he tells Amber that he's traveling for work, largely to Europe. And then there's even something about him renegotiating his contract.
Yes, and this is like right before Laci went missing. He's like, "I'm going to renegotiate my contract so I can spend more time with you and her daughter," who I forget her name. It's like Ariana. That was her name. Still is, as far as I know.
Still is.
So they do end up having sex that night, which Amber is very embarrassed about when she talks about this later on. She's like, "You know, I normally wouldn't have just like slept with someone I just met, but he was super charming and super handsome and he seemed like really put together."
Boy, did you get it wrong, Amber.
Oh, boy, did she get it
boy,
wrong.
did she get it wrong. So on December 8th, obviously, she and Scott at this point, you know, Amber feels like they're basically in a relationship. And so Scott confesses to Amber that he was married, and that, you know, he gets really upset, like visibly upset, is crying on her shoulder, and lets her know that this will actually be his first Christmas without his wife. And he doesn't really elaborate on
the details.
How. And Amber expressed that she didn't really feel comfortable kind of pushing him because he was obviously just so over the top upset, right? As you would be if maybe your spouse had died of natural causes or something like that,
or suddenly.
Right, yeah. So she doesn't push it, but
and this is December 8th.
Right.
which is weeks before Laci's gone missing, weeks before it's the first Christmas he'll spend without his wife.
Right.
So
how could you possibly have known? At the very least, I mean, in what world, in what way could you possibly predict that your wife would go missing, or let alone, you know, the way he words it implies she died, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the thing is he didn't say she died.
And you might think to yourself, like, oh, Scott, like you're showing some redeemable qualities by being
Attaboy.
genuine. Good job.
Way to make a name for the Scots.
Maybe he didn't tell her that he had a living wife who was pregnant, but at least he, you know, was trying to let her know in some way that he was a married man. But no, that's not what happened. Sean, that mutual friend that introduced them, had a coworker or like a friend that worked with Scott. So somehow Sean ended up finding out, like, hey, Scott is a married man. So she confronted Scott and said, you know, you better tell Amber before I do. So backed into a corner. That's the only reason he even thought to bring it up.
Right. So what does Scott do after he tells Amber that this is the first Christmas he will spend without his wife? Well,
naturally,
he goes and gets a secret boat that he buys in cash. And yeah, I mean,
and on top of that, the boat pass that he bought, it wasn't like a year access membership. It was just like a day pass. So he obviously knew that he wasn't an avid fisherman.
He's probably going to sell the boat after dumping the body.
Yeah, absolutely. He just needed something to do that day. The boat was merely like a vessel through which he could dispose of the body, or at the very least create an alibi for himself, right?
He's
knowing that he, you know, is probably never going to go out on this boat again. He buys like a one-day pass.
Because he's cheap.
Because he's cheap, exactly. So after he buys this secret boat, obviously nobody's aware of this. He didn't tell his family. Even Laci didn't know. Nobody knew about this boat. Not Amber. Nobody. Scott attends a Christmas party with Amber, and it's really sad because there's pictures of Laci home alone.
No, she actually had a Christmas party as well, but he had to travel for business, which means he was actually at Amber Fry's Christmas party, which was a little more formal.
Yeah.
So there's a picture of them laughing together, and that's like the infamous Amber Fry and Scott Peterson photo.
Isn't she like sitting on his lap?
She's sitting on his lap or something, and I think she used that in her Christmas card. But what was most horrible is that Laci had a Christmas party, and there's a picture of her with her big pregnant belly, and she's like sitting there and like, you know, smiling,
being cute.
Yeah, while her husband's off being a douche.
So speaking of Christmas, Amber, naturally, like a normal girlfriend, wants to send Scott a Christmas present, right? So she asks, like, you know, hey Scott, where can I send your Christmas present to? Like, what's your address? And he gives her a P.O. box.
Right, but he told her he lived in San Francisco, but his P.O. box is in Modesto, and she's like, that's hella weird. Why would I send your mail to Modesto when you live in San Francisco?
And just the fact that it's a P.O. box at all. I mean, if you were dating somebody, would you give them a P.O. box?
He told her that he had a concierge P.O. box service that would deliver his mail wherever he's at.
Very bougie.
Yeah, which is, I don't even know if that's a thing. I think he just made that up, but...
He just kind of makes it up on the
fly. You know.
So after that, I mean, that kind of is a red flag, right? I mean, Amber, although she might have been a little naive, she wasn't completely stupid, right?
No, she was smart. She was just being like courted by a sociopath.
Yeah, absolutely. So he gives her a P.O. box. That's kind of odd, right? And then following that, he just has some kind of strange excuses for where he'll be and his whereabouts.
And his story's always changing. Like, he says he's in Europe, but then he answers his phone.
Right.
So, like, how are you answering your phone? Oh, I'm in Maine. Oh, you're suddenly in Maine? I'm duck hunting with my dad in Maine.
Right. So he said that he would be duck hunting around Christmas, and then for New Year's Eve, he'd be in Europe. But when she called him, he said he was actually in New York City. Just, like, a lot of inconsistencies that led Amber to feel kind of uncertain.
You know, I read Amber Fry's book, and she said she felt at ease with Scott very quickly, and she didn't see that as a bad thing. She just thought it was like meant to be, and they get along well, and he's super sweet. And there was this one story I remember from her book where they were drinking red wine, and he spilt some on her couch, and they just laughed like hysterically about it, and then they cleaned it up. And she later found out that there was this instance where Scott spilled red wine on Laci's white couch, and she was really upset about it. And he even said to her when this happened with him and Amber, he even said, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're just so chill," and you just like laughed it off. And I bet you he freaking did that on purpose just to see what she would do.
Some scary
I bet you.
next level stuff.
Because that's how those kind of people are.
Yeah, no kidding.
No offense to you, Scott Peterson, in prison, but
Scott, if you're watching this. So obviously a couple of these things, you know, raise some concerns for Amber. So she actually has a friend that she reaches out to
and he's the police.
And he's the police. So she says, hey, you know, I'm dating this guy, but he's kind of
shady.
Some of his stories don't make sense. Would you basically do like a background check on him?
He actually offered to do that when she she was telling him stuff or something about him. Like he wouldn't, he didn't call her when he said he was going to call her, and then like a few other things. And he's like, I can check this guy out if you want. And
this is pretty like progressive. Standard. No, I would say for like the early 2000s. I mean, now, you know, the first thing we do is like look at people's social,
Google,
get a good feel. Yeah, Google them. There's like websites where you can easily run a background check. But for somebody to be like, you know, in the early 2000s, be like, let me check this guy out for you. Like, wow, it's pretty astounding. So obviously the friend looks into Scott and sees that he's married, right?
In Modesto.
Not, you know.
And in fact, his wife is missing.
And he's, in fact, implicated in his wife's disappearance, probably at this point. So it's safe to say he might have had something to do with Laci's disappearance.
And he says, call this phone number immediately. It's the Modesto police. And she does.
And they're like, lady, we're not trying to hear this. She has to call a few times.
3 times. And the 3rd time, she's on the phone, and this lady's like, oh, yeah. Okay, what are you? You're Scott Peterson's mistress, what? And one of the detectives like grabs the phone, and he's like,
yeah.
Hi, I want to hear everything you have to say.
Yeah, no kidding.
And she comes in for an interview, right? And she has pictures.
And they find her to be very credible, obviously.
She has notes. She has dates.
Her Christmas card is of her and Scott.
She has a Christmas
together.
ornament with her, Scott, and Ariana, her daughter, that she like was gonna give to Scott as a Christmas present. It's so sad. I feel so bad for everybody.
Yeah, he really got her good, you know?
He did. So he told her that he would be traveling to Europe for New Year's Eve. That was a lie.
Obviously. Spoiler alert, it was a lie.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, so when she connects with law enforcement, they're like, hey, we need you to keep talking to this guy. And also, we need to take you to, they went to like Radio Shack and got her a recording device.
Will you record your phone calls? And she's like, yeah, anything to help.
And like, as they're setting it up, Scott calls her. And so, boom, she's in it with them, recording all of these phone conversations. Yeah. You know, and just obviously has to kind of keep up the facade that she knows nothing and has to just kind of play along with him saying wherever he, you know, says he is at that particular moment in Europe or whatever.
In her book, she said she was so nervous when she got
that
first call. And the call dropped. Like, they didn't have a good connection or whatever. And she was just, like, shaking. And they're like, no, it's fine. He doesn't know that you're recording the calls. He doesn't know you're talking to police. It's fine. And he calls back, and it's a really brief conversation. He's like, I'm in Europe. You know?
Well, and you know that probably, and I'm not sure in regards to how this aligns with the details of her book, but I'm sure maybe in order to get her to cooperate, the police probably, you know, knowingly or unknowingly painted Scott as, you know, potentially somebody that could be involved in the murder or disappearance of his wife. And so if that's somebody that you've had a relationship with or an affair for a while, that itself is kind of scary. Like, could you be, you know, potentially making somebody upset and angry that might have caused their wife to disappear at almost 9 months pregnant?
That was a concern of Laci's parents as well. And also Amber Frey was nervous he would hurt her.
Right.
But Amber,
when he finds out that you're recording these calls, if he were to find out.
Yeah, Amber is, from her book, she is a firm believer that he did it. Especially because she found out his wife was alive and then now missing, and he said that she was dead, or implied it heavily, and she was, you know, just sick to her stomach about it, so that's why she wanted to help. Right. She wanted to do anything she could do to help Laci and Connor.
To help find them.
But it was unfortunately too late, because they were probably already dead by then. I mean, I think they were dead the night before Christmas Eve.
Yeah. I mean, by Christmas Eve, they were probably long gone, you know. Yeah, so they're recording these calls. Scott's interacting with her, saying that he's in different parts of Europe traveling. And there's one particular moment where they're having like a candlelight vigil for Laci. And he actually calls Amber and he is talking to her and he says that he's basically, can you imagine, like, your wife is missing for all intents and purposes, presumably dead, but
Your wife who's holding the life of your child in her womb.
right, that everyone is, searching for and hoping to find. Yeah, and you are on the phone with your mistress, lying to her about your whereabouts.
But unfortunately, I think that's what convicted Scott Peterson, was that he's a scumbag. I don't know.
Your words.
I don't know. I mean, I think he was, guilty before he was ever guilty. I also think he did it. That's, I'm just
two separate opinions.
Right. I don't know that he did not have a fair trial. That was going to be impossible pretty much anywhere. They did not sequester the jury. The jury, mocked him and made fun of him. It was not good.
It was not good. Yeah, it was definitely not going to be easy to, give him a fair trial. Like you said, it may not have even been possible. But
it was not.
I mean, this evidence is pretty damning, even though it's not necessarily evidence of the crime. It's just evidence of being a terrible person and one that, could potentially make you capable of.
But the thing is
horrible.
DNA evidence is very new. Back in that time period, they were doing blood type. They didn't have any really blood evidence.
It was all circumstantial evidence prior to DNA evidence. That's how you convicted people.
Is they didn't have strong DNA testing. They hadn't even synthesized the human genome. Oh, we got a
Thanks
follower.
for the follow.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you. So they didn't have a very strong physical evidence case, but the circumstances surrounding the case, I do think, I don't know, they did not let the trial be filmed, which is probably for the best, but then we don't have the testimony.
Right.
So I don't know, we'll get more into the trial as we go on, but back to Laci and Connor's vigil. Scott's on the phone flirting and courting Amber, saying that he is, seeing the Eiffel Tower on New Year's Eve, and
oh, it's so beautiful. Wish you were here. XOXO.
with his friend Francois,
making up names. Yeah,
people that
don't even exist.
Right.
It's not a good look. It's not how you would want your husband to be acting at your vigil, to say the least.
It's just, it's deplorable. It's beyond.
Well, and then the family even goes on to say that Scott was just very absent from the vigil. They obviously want some kind of press coverage for this.
And presence.
Right.
In Sharon Roach's book, she said they literally could not find Scott. They were going to get on stage and beg
hiding from the
for
cameras.
Laci's safe return.
Right.
And they're like, oh, where's the husband? We need him up here too.
Husband.
Then Scott Peterson's sister comes up and is like, yeah, he just doesn't feel comfortable doing that.
He's shy.
Yeah, I think she said something like he's sad.
Well, and looking back, he
didn't look sad.
No, he didn't look sad at any point, but it's safe to say he probably didn't want much involvement with the cameras just because he had a mistress that didn't know he was married, didn't know his wife was missing, and he had also already told her that his wife was, not going to be around this Christmas. So naturally, he probably didn't want to be in front of the camera. That's safe to say.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely didn't make him look great to the family, although I think at this point they still weren't considering him involved in his wife's disappearance because why would they suspect him?
Scott was a master manipulator. He knew how to make himself look really good. He knew how to charm people. Laci's family did not know the real Scott Peterson. They did not know the affair having,
I would say no one did, really.
I think Laci Peterson met him that night. I think he probably waited for her pregnant self to fall asleep, and he probably, sorry, this is getting gross, but
trigger warning.
Yeah, he probably. Yeah, I think the police officers speculate based on what she was wearing that he. I mean, she was wearing the outfit that she wore to the salon with Scott,
which was on the 23rd.
Which was on the 23rd. So she had these cream colored pants and I don't really know, but that's what she was found in. So it makes you think that she was probably killed the day that she was wearing that, instead of she wore Scott's blue pajamas, then wore these black stretchy pants, and then somehow maybe the robbers carried her back to the house and changed her clothes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And again, the fact that the only person that can corroborate the timeline of things is Scott, likely the person who committed this heinous crime, is just terrible, really. And so obviously his behavior at the vigil was questionable, but would we expect?
Well, later that night, he calls Amber at midnight her time zone, which is also his time zone, spoiler alert. And he he says to her, oh, I just wanted to wish you a Happy New Year. And she's at her friend Sean's party. And it's like, pretty wild, and they're having fun. And
Pretty wild.
He's like, oh, I feel bad that I called you while everyone's in there hugging and saying Happy New Year. I'm like, no, you didn't. You don't feel bad about that.
No, I don't think anything makes him feel
And then
bad.
they're going back and forth about New Year's resolutions, and she's like, oh, did you come up with your New Year's resolution? Her voice is tremendously high.
Oh.
And he's like, no, I can't think of one. And she's like, oh.
I can't think of one because I can't think of any flaws that I have as a sociopath.
And then she's like, oh, I thought of one for you. I want you to not travel as much. And he's like, yeah, remember, I'm going to renegotiate my contract.
In real life, he means his wife is going to turn up missing.
He's going to renegotiate his marriage contract by murdering someone, basically.
Yeah.
So it's not a full lie.
It's definitely not, but obviously, he's trying to kind of stay out of the spotlight and trying to keep this thing going with Amber as much as he can. So he's still calling her. Meanwhile, she's obviously recording all of the conversations and, at some point does come forward and give like a public address, right?
She does, because one of her friends from work leaked her name.
That's right. And the funny thing is that Christmas card that we mentioned with her and Scott on it, one of her friends happened to save that particular Christmas card. And so that photo was like blasted all over the media. And, you do feel really bad for Amber Fry. You can tell she's like shaking in her boots in that address.
Yeah, it's so, oh my God.
I mean, I feel sad for her just watching that. I'm surprised that she gave the address. You would think that like her victim's advocate lawyer.
She didn't have one yet.
No, I know she didn't, but you would think maybe she would have. Like, I don't know how you could get through
So
that.
I remember she says that when she was going to make that address, she like could not get her hair to look right, and she didn't have any makeup on. Like, she was just kind of like told, hey, we need you to do this, and she was like super nervous. I think
shaking in her boots.
Backside to that. And so she like literally when they start the address, she goes like, because she's like so nervous. She's
like,
got her paper.
Left poor Amber Fry's body.
I know, like she did not sign up for this crap.
No,
she just
didn't.
thought she had like a nice, wealthy man who was interested in her and her sweet little daughter, and they were just gonna like be a happy family. Oh, we've got
That's
a wave.
a fun emoji. Hi.
Hello in the chat.
So after Amber makes that address, Scott at some point decides to do a Diane Sawyer interview.
He gives like 2 or 3 interviews. One is a local person who, she didn't really make fun of Scott a lot. She kind of, when she talked about him, she was like, oh, kind of neutral. So she was like a local Modesto reporter, and she interviewed him.
That's right.
And,
yeah, she was really happy to have that story.
I believe this is when I don't know if this is when she asked him about the vigil, but at some point someone asks him about the vigil, and he literally says, they asked me about the candlelight vigil we held at the park, and they asked, why weren't you on the stage with the family? And frankly, this isn't about us to be out on the stage in front of the camera. It's about us working towards bringing the one person we love most. A piece of our family is missing. And he says it in this creepy, like croaky, fake sad voice, which I've heard people do when they try to pretend they're sad. They're like, oh yeah, I'm really sad.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he also refers in this interview, I think this is the Diane Sawyer interview where he refers to her in the past tense.
He does.
He goes, Laci was amazing, is amazing. He like immediately corrects himself, like, ooh, good catch, buddy.
And the sad thing is, at this point, people are obviously still looking for Laci, right? Like, they're investing a lot of time, effort, energy, resources in searching things that are essentially dead ends, right? So while she's missing, he did that interview. He did do the Diane Sawyer interview.
And he's got like this like find Laci button on. I'm like, bro, doing the most.
Yeah, so he obviously denies that he and Laci have or have had any marital problems at all. that their relationship was great. He just happened to be having a casual affair, just the one affair, just some light work.
So I will say, I don't know if I said this last time, but he did have another affair when he was, yes, when they were in college. When he was attending Cal Poly, Laci graduated one semester before him and moved, I guess, to back home, wherever that was at the time. And he stayed living on campus with a bunch of other guys as roommates. And Sharon Rocha said, you know, she was talking in her book that she was talking to Laci, and Laci said, Scott's not acting like a married man or something like that. And Sharon was like, what's that mean? And she didn't go into any more detail. And she figured,
it turns out.
Yeah, she thought it meant like, oh, he's just partying or something, but
not, you know, being attentive to her or whatever.
Not being, you know,
present.
Right. But what it really meant was she went to visit him at Cal Poly and walked in on him in bed with another woman. And somehow they were already married.
Acting like a married man.
Yeah.
I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Honey. So basically he claims that, you know, although he was having this affair with Amber Fry, and he, at this point he's continuing to talk to her too, right? So that's kind of noteworthy. He's still talking to Amber Fry. He says he's proud of her for making that address, which is like just a weird thing to say regardless.
He's such a creep,
He's
bro.
such a creep.
Gosh.
So he says that he's proud of Amber Fry. He has no issues with his wife. He's having this affair, and he actually claims that he told Laci. And Diane Sawyer, she does kind of dig into him a little bit. She says, do you expect us, America, to believe that your wife, who's over 8 months pregnant, 8.5 months pregnant, is just, she knows about your affair and she's just okay with it? You think she's, and he said, you know, she's just at peace with it. You know, she wasn't happy about it, but it wasn't anything that was going to break us up. And it's like, that actually is usually how that works. If you have an affair and you tell your wife about it out of the goodness of your heart, I mean, that does break many marriages.
Well, let alone being 8.5 months pregnant.
Being 8.5 months
the stress
pregnant. Yeah, and then there's another interview with his parents too, which is very odd. And
his parents, okay, I will say,
they're such enabling parents.
I don't know if his father's still alive, but his mother is dead, so I hate to speak ill of the dead, but they're kind of assholes. Like, they were horrible to Laci's family during the trial. Like, finally when Scott gets convicted guilty and then he gets sentenced to death, at the sentencing, Ron turns to the father who was nearby, Scott's father, and says, I'm so sorry. And he goes, fuck you. I swear to God.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
During tea? I just want to know how many men he killed in prison. Why don't we follow this guy? He's super interesting.
I don't think he's killed anyone in prison. He's on death row.
Wait, are you chatting us from prison right now? Let us know.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate Diane Sawyer calling him out.
Yeah, I do. But his parents actually, when questioned about like, okay, so Scott had this affair, like, did you know about this? And they're like, no, we kind of like found out with all of you guys. And they pretty much say, I don't want to say they excuse his behavior, but they say that statistically more men cheat on their wives when they are pregnant, which might be a true fact, but that is just like horrifying and fascinating.
Yeah, it's actually really common for men to cheat after a miscarriage and also during pregnancy. It's not unheard of. I don't know if it is more often
what is unheard of is going on Diane Sawyer though and telling everyone that your wife knew about the affair and she was cool with it. Okay. Meanwhile, you're still talking to Amber Fry and lying about your whereabouts.
That's the thing that the police thought was really weird is once he told Laci about the affair, he continued to court Amber Fry like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Because that probably never happened.
Look,
this is what I think. Either Laci found out and flipped out at him and he just like, okay, bye. I've got this boat ready. I've been waiting for, give me a reason.
I got the boat ready. I don't even like making a joke like that because that's so sad. R.I.P. Laci.
That's horrible. She was like feisty and short and smart and crafty and cool and good cook, like, and he just like completely wasted her life.
Isn't it so sad though that a woman that walks in on her boyfriend at the time in bed with another woman gives him another chance to redeem himself, and she basically ends up murdered, tossed into a bay.
Never tear us apart.
Like, not it.
That's terrible.
All. That's just really.
Nobody deserves to die like that.
There is no like
Especially-
dignity in that death, you know?
No.
And again, at this point, Laci's still missing. And Scott's whole like claim to fame is that he claims to be doing these interviews to bring awareness to Laci being found. But prior to those interviews, is nowhere to be seen in the media whatsoever. He refers to Laci in the past tense in this Diane Sawyer interview. It's very cringy.
Because she's dead.
Yeah, because she's dead, and unfortunately,
And he
he
knows
knows it. Right. So
And
you would almost think to yourself, like, I don't even know why would you even give an interview like that and make a goof like that, like referring to your wife in the past tense? I mean,
Well, it's actually like a Freudian slip. Like
even
he
the best
knows,
sociopaths can't keep it straight, I guess.
right? But he knows she's dead. So why would you talk about someone who's dead in the present tense? Try it sometime. It is hard to do because your brain knows. Try it.
Yeah, exactly.
Try it right now. What are you waiting for? So anyway, let's talk about some weird stuff that Scott did that Sharon Rocha points out in her book. So
Let's make a list.
so Sharon Rocha had an interview with People magazine at her home where she's going to talk about Laci. They were going to do a 2-page spread in the People magazine, and they were looking for pictures of Laci. So they were going through all these old pictures, and Scott pulls out one of him at a bachelor party, and a bunch of guys are mooning the camera, and he's like, "How about this one?" And they're like,
your wife is missing.
"Okay."
What do you mean?
Then he pulls out a picture of Laci in a bikini and goes, "How about this one? This will get some attention." And they're just like, it's so inappropriate.
It's even
stunned.
more inappropriate if you think to yourself, like, at this point, Scott knows Laci's dead because he killed her. Like,
Yeah, that's even worse.
it's even worse. I mean, it's bad if you think he thinks that she's missing, but to wave around a bikini photo of your pregnant wife that you
Deceased.
just murdered, yeah, and
This
the
will get
only
some
person that
attention.
knows is you. I mean, that's just
Sick.
like
That's
death
depraved.
row right there. Like,
Depraved.
give him the chair.
Give him the chair.
Give him the chair.
Sharon Rocha says they had this like weird. Oh my god, this is the spaghetti. Is the whole thing. So after Laci's been missing a few days, and Sharon is like distraught. She becomes so distraught. She's like hallucinating, like she isn't sleeping. Like she's losing it. Like, and Scott tells her, he's like standing in the doorway, and he's like, "You know, I really miss Laci's spaghetti."
Not like, oh my god, my son would be almost born by now.
I miss
or like,
Laci.
I miss Laci, or
He
like,
goes, "I wish I had some of that spaghetti right now." He reminds me of a sociopathic person I once dated, like very much. It's just like very triggering. So then, because
You
in
know
honor,
what I miss about my pregnant wife that's still missing? I really miss the way she made that spaghetti. Not like her laugh or any
Well, it gets
redeemable
weirder.
qualities about her.
it gets weirder.
It gets weirder.
Speaking of, Laci's spaghetti, they decide to host this like weird spaghetti dinner.
Betty Spaghetti.
I love spaghetti, someone in the chat says. Okay.
We should wear I Love Spaghetti shirts.
I don't like spaghetti
But
that
that's
much.
not really
Oh my god, remember when
sensitive.
I tell a story about how Dad and the spaghetti.
Okay, I want to know if anyone, after you have spaghetti, after you make spaghetti, you've had it for dinner, you have the sauce in one pot, you have the noodles in one pot. When you save it, would you A, save the spaghetti sauce separate, save the noodles separate so that you can sauce your noodles as you see fit?
Is there another option?
Or would you mix it together
No,
like a psycho?
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning. Hit the panic button. Hit the panic button.
It's so bad.
Yeah, would you toss it all together? No, you wouldn't.
Our whole family was in uproar about this. My dad once mixed spaghetti and the sauce together.
Lots of wet noodles. What do you think makes them wet?
Ew.
The sauce, hopefully.
Well,
Is it
anyway,
wet with
our
sauce
whole
or wet
family
with something else?
was in uproar over the mixed spaghetti.
Yeah, don't mix the spaghetti when you save it. That's
Yeah.
disgusting. It's
Dad.
sacrilegious. Dad, don't do it.
So, so they're making a spaghetti dinner in
Back on
honor of
track.
Laci making really good spaghetti. And they said the tone was like all off, and it was just like Scott was acting wildly inappropriate. His family was like cracking these like sick jokes and stuff.
Dudes.
And yeah, I just don't like his family because they were really rude. And they're like, we stand beside Scott. He couldn't have done this because I raised him. It's like, oh my God.
I almost feel like they were, they were obviously enabling parents, but they were kind of manipulated by Scott a little bit.
Well, they probably created Scott. Like, if you have a child that you never discipline, they never
hold
have
accountable for anything.
Yes, they're never taught to be responsible for their actions. You're creating a monster. You're creating a little slick-haired monster that's going to go out and murder their pregnant wife. I mean, his nickname was literally the Golden Child.
Yeah, exactly. Your own family's not going to sell you down the river. Right. So they're sticking up for Scott, but in ways that are just kind of distasteful to somebody that their daughter is missing, right?
If my child killed someone else's kid, I would be like, I'm really sorry. Send him down the river.
I think, though, sometimes denial is really powerful, too.
It is.
It's easier for people to block out the facts and some of the red flags and warning signs than it is to come to terms with, my son murdered his pregnant wife.
Well, when you hear Laci Peterson, which is Scott's mother, talk about this, she does what she's probably done Scott's entire life, and it just excuses him, justifies the
excuses. Affair.
Yeah. Excuses his actions, excuses his weird behavior. It's just, they're scum, sorry. I don't mean to say the whole family's scum, but like,
apple don't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah, and she said, like, the Petersons were acting so inappropriate that they left. Like, it was just, like, she said Scott was, like, serving the wine and acting like it was, like, a social event. But it was, like, I don't know, it was messed up.
Dude, we just spent a day and a half looking in the park for your wife. You want to calm down a little bit?
Yeah, seriously.
With the wine?
Maybe pretend to be
sad. And the, like, bikini jokes and the
raunchy
jokes.
Humor.
Yeah, like, there's no time like your wife's spaghetti dinner to be making sex jokes.
Honestly, though, like, that kind of sounds like me, though. Like, in a really inappropriate context.
I think maybe sometimes when people are, like, really uncomfortable, they
I think
might
that's
say
just
the
how they
wrong thing.
were, and they weren't sad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, at least it's not my son missing. I mean, they didn't say that, but I'm just saying.
That's not a direct quote.
I think that's what they were feeling. So anyways,
they were feeling.
Scott has been, like, harassed by the media because he's avoiding the media so much that they're like, this is weird.
And not typical of a husband, that has a missing wife and child too, right?
Right, like, even Chris, like, we go to Chris Watts, who strangled his wife and 2 toddlers in Colorado recently. He got in front of the camera and was like, yeah, I hope they come back. He's like, so messed up. Maybe that's why Scott Peterson didn't want to be on camera.
I mean, every time he does get on camera, he looks like a sociopath.
Yeah,
so...
he's like, I've been pretending to care about Laci since I met her, and this is really hard. It's getting really hard.
Yeah, it's really exhausting pretending to care about my wife.
And speaking about her in the present tense, exhausting. Exhausting.
It's hard work.
Gosh. So he dodges the media nonstop. And
I think at this point too, and I did kind of mention it before, but like also he's still talking to Amber. He thinks she doesn't know because she's not mentioning anything about like, hey, like you have a wife, she's missing.
Saw you on the news.
Yeah, saw you on the news
What's up with that?
So she's just kind of like playing it smart and acting stupid, right? That's the expression. So
that's a great expression.
Yeah, she's just playing it smart and acting stupid and, hoping that Scott eventually tells on himself, but he's trying to duck the media as much as possible because she still allegedly doesn't know. Even though she does, and she's recording their phone conversation.
So, about 3 weeks after Laci's been missing, the police have Scott come down to the police station, and they're like, hey, we know about Amber Fry, and we're going to announce it. So, she's going to, And he went to Sharon's house, and she went to give him a hug just habitually. Like, some people just hug everyone. And he just interrupted her, and he's like, someone asked me how I was doing today, and I said, fine. And I really am. I'm doing fine.
First of all, Scott, nobody asked you that.
She's like, how are you doing fine? Like, all of us are a mess. We're, like, hysterical.
She's like, I'm not sleeping. I'm hallucinating. But you're fine.
Did I just hallucinate that? Like, what?
Oh, my God. So bad.
Right before the media found out about Amber, Scott told Sharon they needed to update Laci's due date to February 16th.
To the media.
Not February 10th. That's not true. He just made that up. And you know why he made that up? Because Amber Fry's birthday is on February 10th. That's Laci's due date.
He sounds like a stand-up guy. Knows how to bottle it all up and move on. Like men do.
Like men do.
According to you, Mike and Text 392.
So, 92 was a good year.
It was a good year.
Yeah.
You weren't born yet.
I wasn't born yet.
Neither
Neither were
was
you.
I.
So, what's really weird about Laci's due date being Amber Fry's birthday is Amber Fry gets pregnant after Scott's incarcerated, and Amber Fry's due date was Laci's birthday. Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Get it off me. Get it off me.
She actually was like induced labor early. Like she's like, no, this is not cool.
Poor Amber Fry.
And you know what I feel bad about is, this is like got nothing to do with like the murder, I guess. I don't know, but in Sharon Rocha's book versus Amber Fry's book, Amber Fry's like talks about like how important all of this stuff is, and like her meeting Sharon Rocha was like a big deal and stuff. And like in Sharon Rocha's book, it's like one sentence, and like Amber Fry's book is like a chapter.
Sum this up in one.
Yeah, it's
sentence.
like she barely mentions Amber Fry at all. Which I mean,
I guess though in a weird way, and not to like over explain, but it kind of makes sense. Like to Amber, this was probably a monumental thing, and in a weird way, Laci did have a lot to do with her life, but for Sharon, this is her daughter, right? And so even though she did get to meet,
she's a side character in the main story.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would say she's one sentence worth, but you know, it's kind of like for Sharon, the emphasis is on her daughter, right? And her relationship with her daughter and you know, Scott's kind of involvement in all of that. But to Amber, she probably thinks often of Laci, you know, which is sad. But I wouldn't say that Laci's mom thinks often of Amber, just as a guess.
So Scott starts spending time outside of Modesto, which, keep in mind, they think Laci disappeared in Modesto. So where, you know, that's like where the major search party is Modesto.
So if you were like hoping to find your wife, wouldn't you want to be
not in San Francisco?
Not like out of town or, you know?
So he,
you'd want to at least stay close by so that people can, you know,
let you be informed, maybe?
It's almost like you
but
don't want to know when she's found.
Right. So he was being horribly harassed by the media. He ends up dyeing his hair blonde and growing a freaking goatee and dyeing his eyebrows and goatee blonde so people don't recognize him. He sells freaking Laci's car. He's like, don't do that anymore.
I guess the explanation for that was that his truck was still in police custody. And so because of the kind of work that he did, he needed like a larger car.
I think he bought like a Toyota though.
I don't know, but I guess he was saying that he sold Laci's car so that he could use the money from that to buy like a more appropriate work vehicle.
And he bought a boat.
But listen, the thing is, like, let's assume your wife is missing, right?
Why would you sell her car?
Why would you sell her car? And also, too, like, let's say she is found, right? Hopefully alive, hopefully. Wouldn't you think that, like, you know, you would want to be in the place where you lived together?
Where you left off.
Like,
well, he actually
sold your car, by the way.
Puts the house up for sale, and he's like, I'd like to sell it furnished. Laci could come home any day.
Murder suspect shouldn't behave.
And then you know what he does? He fucking puts the house in his mother's name, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe I'm wrong. I think he just made her power of attorney. I think that's what happened because they wouldn't let Sharon Rocha get any of Laci's stuff.
Well, and I know you kind of feel strongly about Scott changing his appearance so much, but one could also kind of say that somebody that changes their appearance, if they're being harassed by the media and potentially followed and trailed by law enforcement, like maybe that would be enough for you to hope that you could change your appearance and evade some unnecessary detection.
I'm sure that's what Laci Peterson said.
Right.
So,
well, I don't know.
So this is where it gets crazy.
Crazy.
So, they put a GPS on Scott's car, partially because they were worried he was going to go try to kill Amber Fry. You know, there's no evidence that he was going to, but like, what if he drove to her house? You know, like, they just want to be aware of what's going on.
His whereabouts.
So, The bodies of Laci Peterson and her unborn son were found in April. And they found first a, very developed fetus, and then they found Laci's body. She did not have her head. She did not have any of her limbs. I don't know if she had parts of her legs. I don't know. I don't want to be gross, but
her abdomen was open, right? And there was sea life inside of her rib cage. So, I mean, obviously they went missing in end of December. So, she had been underwater.
Mm-hmm. And Sharon Rocha, she's so horrified by this because Laci would get very seasick. She hated the water. She's like, you left her, under the frickin' water with no arms. I had buried my daughter with no arms. She couldn't hold her baby in the casket. It's just absolutely disgusting way to find a body. It's just so unnecessary.
Not that there's an ideal way, but that definitely wouldn't be it for sure.
Well, once they find the bodies, Sharon Rocha calls the police and is it their bodies? And they're like, we're gonna have to verify it, but we think it's them. Guess who didn't call to see if it was the bodies? That's right, Scott Peterson. He never called to see if it was the bodies. Do you know why?
Because he knew it was.
Because he knew it was the bodies.
Hello.
And he's such a sociopath. I bet he's like, oh, I figured they'd tell me if it was. I just wanted to keep her memory alive as long as possible.
Not it, Scott.
5 days after the bodies were found, he was arrested, and I mean, I don't know if we want to go beyond that.
I feel like that's already a lot to kind of digest for now, so they just essentially found the body of, Laci and Connor, and Scott obviously is not really following up or too interested in if it's them, likely because he knew they were dead already.
Yeah.
And, Laci's mom has to claim a body in pretty gruesome condition. So I feel like that's a pretty somber note to leave it on. But yeah, it definitely kind of deserves its own moment, I think.
What do you think? Let's go before we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the robbery? Do you think it really happened on the 24th? Because here's what people say. They say if it happened on the 26th, there was a news van parked in front of Peterson's house at 7 a.m. or something.
How would nobody have got it?
Right. But in Sharon Rocha's book, she said the robbers were robbing the house and leaving by the time the news vans were pulling up. And they just look like a bunch of dudes moving a safe. But one of the slick-haired, fast-talking news anchors was like, if I had seen somebody, I would have gone up to them and interviewed them. So I'm like, really? You would interview the utility workers? You'd interview the guys moving a safe for $50 or whatever? I don't know, but
I don't know. Kind of suspicious.
It is suspicious. I do think it does create room for reasonable doubt, but at the same time, if Scott wasn't having an affair, would that change things? Maybe. If he was having an affair, but he didn't say his wife was deceased, would that change things?
Yeah. I don't know that the affair itself is damning evidence enough to say that Scott murdered his wife, but I do think him saying that this is his first Christmas, his first holiday season without his wife. Shortly after that, he gets a boat permit for a secret boat that nobody knew that he had, that he paid for in cash.
Bought fishing gear because he didn't want to ask Ron for his fishing pole.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't have the bait.
Didn't have
if the bait don't bite.
Then what?
I don't know.
You didn't think that through. You didn't think it through.
I was waiting for you to finish that one.
I don't know. I probably could have.
So
but I wouldn't have come
Sharon
up with
Rocha says that they didn't think Scott was guilty because he had an affair. She said lots of men have affairs, but they actually presented some of the evidence that comes out at trial. They were like, oh, hey, and this, they kind of explained everything. They're like, he bought this boating license.
Scott's in the house. Honestly, I will have night terrors. Don't even joke like that.
I don't think Scott
I don't think he would murder.
I don't know. I don't know if he would ever murder
really
someone
know
else.
Him very well. Yeah.
I don't know that he ever would.
I think
which means that if he was in Canada, they would just release him.
I think he's learned his lesson.
He's learned his lesson. No, I'm just kidding. To anyone Canadian, they're like, you're an American, pay for your healthcare, man.
That escalated really
Sorry.
quickly.
No, I'm just saying, we do have shit healthcare. It's true.
But that's for another day.
That's for another day.
That's for another day.
Maybe next time.
Yep. Right.
But you didn't say, what do you think about the
Oh, I think truthfully, I don't know that it, and maybe this sounds silly, but I don't know that it even really matters when the burglary happened, because I don't think it had anything to do with Laci's disappearance at all. I think Scott Peterson killed her. I think she was dead.
Would you say that to Scott Peterson's face?
I wouldn't say anything
I
to
wouldn't
Scott
either.
Peterson's face. I wouldn't dignify it with a conversation.
Do you think he'd let us interview him?
I know we only met once, but I know we all are in love. Do you mean you and Scott Peterson?
Okay.
Well,
Well,
that really romantic.
yeah, makes me want to get a spaghetti dinner together.
Spaghetti Western.
Yeah, what is a spaghetti western?
That's a restaurant.
I think that's like a saying about a type of.
Yeah, it's a type of film. It's a Western film that was filmed in Italy, I think.
What?
Isn't that what that means?
I've never heard that.
I don't know.
I'm all about Italy right now, with Versace and everything.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that it doesn't matter. I just don't know that it really has any bearing on how the events turned out.
Yes. Sorry, I'm reading the chat.
Oh, I was like, why are you making that
Yes.
face? I thought you were disagreeing with me.
Gosh.
I was like, do you think Scott Peterson's innocent or something? Scott Peterson
I don't know.
.com?
I don't know. I don't know. I do think he's guilty.
Yeah, I think so too. So
I think he's guilty, but I don't think he had a fair trial. Does that mean he should be convicted? Do I look like a lawyer? I'm
No,
as
you
fair
sure
as a judge.
Reese Witherspoon, get out of here.
Did you say I look like Reese Witherspoon?
Elle Woods. Who?
I do not look like. Did you say I look like Reese Witherspoon?
You just said, do I look like a lawyer? So I said,
Oh.
Reese Witherspoon a la
I
Elle
hate when
Woods in Legally
People
Blonde.
tell me I look like her daughter, Ava something.
.com.net.
Scott Peterson is innocent.com.net. You mean it's .net.com.
.net.com.
Yeah.
That's our website. Check it out.
Yeah, that's what we say for shady websites. It's like, it's not really .net. They make it look .net by making it .net.com. I do not look like Reese Witherspoon. So, all right.
All right.
So until next time,
Cheers.
this concludes our episode of Crime Talk Tea Time.
Crime Talk. Tea time.